Welcome in to Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
Round one of the 2023 NHL draft has come and gone. Connor Bedard is a Hawk. We got some drama. Frank, what did you make of night one of the NHL draft?
It's rather quiet from an insider's perspective, and seems like Nashville may have gotten the better of you last night. How you feeling?
Well, it got the better of one of us. That's for sure.
Hey, look, sometimes, you grow up and you learn, and prudence is the better part of valor. You take the L, you go to your room, get some room service, and go to bed. And others are bag chuckers and hurry up and run right to Lower Broadway.
Yeah, some of us are. Welcome into today's show, a June 29th edition of Daily Faceoff Live. As always, brought to you by Betano. The game starts now at betano.ca. If you happen to have a Leo Carlsson going second overall prop bet on Betano, you probably had yourself a good night. Plus 300, plus 350 is where you were getting that. Let's throw 2 minutes and 30 seconds up on the clock and start with that, Frank. The surprise at the top. Walked into the arena yesterday to cover what is my second NHL draft, and I started to hear the rumblings that the Ducks wanted to maybe switch things up. And number two, earlier in the week, it was, the Ducks want to surprise everyone and take Michkov. They end up going with Swedish centerman Leo Carlsson. What do you make of that pick?
Well, the Ducks, they feel like they got their franchise center. Yeah. And there's been a long list of Swedes who have starred in Southern California, even just of late. Hampus Lindholm on the back end, and then you've got Rickard Rakell and Jacob Silfverberg and all these different guys that have been through Anaheim. That it's been a factory. Now you can add Carlson to that mix. Really, really impressive kid. Had a chance to talk with him after round one. And first off, he was talking about his nerves and his adventure getting there. He had to drive 14 hours from New York after his flight was canceled. Wasn't sure he was going to make it to Nashville. Then gets picked number 2 overall. And maybe the most impressive part, not just about his game as one of the true best net front presences available in this draft, is also his stutter. I don't know if you've learned much about this, but to have a stutter, to be able to speak confidently in media interviews and do it in a second language is so incredibly impressive. So full marks to him, and had a chance to talk to him about what he's doing and the confidence that he wants to provide other kids that have a stutter. Great story. But more than that, the Ducks feel like they have the guy that can be their number one pivot for the foreseeable future to add to that talent of young stars that they have in Anaheim already. I know they're really excited. Some people viewed it as maybe a little bit off the board. You bypass Adam Fantilli, who had a historic freshman season at Michigan, I guess, but Pat Verbeek comes from the school of Steve Yzerman, and think back to, I don't know, Moritz Seider.
Yeah.
People were saying, he's a little bit off the board. Why'd they pick him? He was down in the 15s or 20s. Doesn't really matter. When if the team likes you at that spot, it's just a number.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk about the Columbus perspective of this thing. They go ahead and they get Adam Fantilli, and you look at the little college hockey factory that they're building up front with guys like Ken Johnson as well. Columbus was probably pretty happy to walk up to that podium and take Fantilli 3.
Oh, I think they were thrilled. Either way, they were getting a great center. But to know that you're getting a guy that I think not just has the skill and the high-end finishing ability, but also someone that has a bit of an edge and bite to his game.
Yep.
And I think one other thing that's really interesting about Fantilli is that over the last number of weeks, I think even at the Combine, he had voiced that he wanted to be in Columbus. Like, who's the last prospect that's ever been like, yeah, Columbus, that's the place I want to play?
I think it speaks to a little bit of the culture they're building up there with those young guys, though.
It's not just the young guys, but now add him into the mix with Patrick Laine and Johnny Gaudreau, and then also, what about the impact and changes that they've already made on their own back end? I don't know for sure that Fantilli's stepping into the NHL. I think it depended on the team that he was drafted by, but I could for sure see him making an immediate impact next year in Columbus. And I think that Blue Jackets team is knocking on the door of the playoffs.
I think they might be as well in the next couple of days here. The hiring of Mike Babcock will be made official. So something's brewing in Columbus, and they'll be happy with Fantilli at 3. That was the stunner. Everyone's jaws were on the floor. Carlson goes 2, Fantilli goes 3. And then, Frank, from that point on, it was a lot of waiting for something big to happen, and nothing did. For the first time since 2007, we didn't see a trade during the first round of the NHL draft. I thought DeBrincat would go. I thought someone was itching to move into the top 5. I thought a lot was going to happen. Why did nothing happen?
Well, first off, I don't know if you'd call it an insider's dream or an insider's nightmare.
I was sitting next to you. I go nightmare.
So it was a little sad from that perspective, but then I was also thinking about it from another way, and that was, if there are no trades, then that means you can't get scooped by anyone else. So you're not taking any L's on the night, which for me,
you can't get your heart broken if you never get a girlfriend.
That's true. And so I would, in this case, why was there no action? There's a number of different answers and reasons for it. One, let's just start with the Montreal Canadiens at number 5 overall. They had 4 to 5 different offers that were on the table to move that pick, but they had their sights set on one player in particular for weeks, and that was David Reinbacher. If he was available to them, they were running to the podium to make that selection. They were so happy to get their guy. If somehow the San Jose Sharks selected him, which I think their calculus the whole time was that the Sharks were going with Smith because Smith played at the same school as Mike Briere, and he actually played with Mike Grier's son, so knew him, pretty well. And a lot of people were like, okay, the Smith and Sharks connection, that's an easy one to sort of snuff out.
Yeah.
Kind of believed Carlson, Fantilli, and Bedard would go 1, 2, 3. But if for whatever reason someone went off the board and took Reinbacher, the Habs were going to probably slide back a couple slots and trade that pick, maybe to Nashville, maybe to somewhere else. Nashville, trying to get into the top 10. Barry Trotz acknowledged after the draft that even had some uncomfortable conversations. I reported earlier in the day, Yaroslav Askarov, their number 11 overall pick, the goalie who had a great season this year in Milwaukee, his first North American pro season, he was available and in talks. But teams wanted a lot more than just Askarov in this draft to move into the top 10. So Nashville isn't able to sneak in. Montreal doesn't move back. The Philadelphia Flyers at number 7, who had talked to other teams, hey, 4, 5, 6, their sights were set on Michkov. Everyone knew it. And it was like, well, maybe we don't even need to trade anyone, and he could just fall right to us. So that's where the Flyers were at. And then we'll transition now to talk about the St. Louis Blues, because
let's move on to that.
They were the team that we were saying all week heading in. And it's not me saying it. It's not my prediction. Doug Armstrong was telling other teams, we are not selecting 3 times in the first round. We're not picking at 10, 25, and 29. He expected to be one of the most active GMs at this draft. And there he was, marching to the stage 3 separate times to make 3 first-round picks. I think there was some surprise for sure with that. I also talked to a couple GMs that picked in that range, and they said, we tried to move back and couldn't find any takers. We wanted to take the surplus value with extra second-round picks or whatever it was for people to jump up. Couldn't get anyone to do it. And I do think the Torrey Krug situation has thrown a huge wrench into Doug Armstrong's plans. He was planning to have a lot more flexibility and freedom moving that contract off of his books. And the fact that Krug didn't waive his no trade clause, you can't go out and add a big name forward with those first round picks with Krug on your books.
Yeah.
So they're kind of in a tough spot. And I think this week, or today in particular, is going to be a really big day in terms of moving potential contracts.
You're nailing it with the transitions from topic.
I'm just trying to make your life
today.
easier so that you really don't have to do anything and you can remain in your fog over there.
Yeah, let me just drink my orange juice and enjoy the show. Let's move on and talk about the buyout window coming to a close in the next, 24 to 36 hours here. A lot of smoke about Blake Wheeler and what the Winnipeg Jets are looking to do, but there's a pretty long list of guys who are contracts that teams simply want to get off the books. Frank, take us through a few of the names here that we have up.
Yeah, so these are not all buyout candidates.
They're more, they're more contracts that
we could move. Yeah, so just want to be clear in case anyone's watching on our YouTube stream. And if you are, by the way, fire some questions in the chat, #AskDFO, because we will take your questions in a minute. But if you take a look at that board, big day, I think, for Kyler Yamamoto and his tenure with the Oilers. The Jets have been trying to move Blake Wheeler as opposed to buying him out. I think that's their preference, is to retain half rather than spread out the cap hit over 2 years. As reported yesterday, the Pittsburgh Penguins had engaged with a couple teams on the idea of moving Jeff Petrie and his contract at $6.25 million with 2 years left. Barclay Goodrow's name has been out there a bit from the New York Rangers. They're also seeking some cap flexibility.
He would come if they bought him out with a cap bonus for the next couple of seasons.
I don't think they have any interest in the buyout portion of it. I think they're really trying to move the cap hit if they can. And if you go back to that board and take a look at some of the other pieces on there, Kevin LeBanc, Tyler Myers, 2 names that have been out there for a bit as well. Heading into the last year of their deals. Here's the thing. We've seen a bunch of players traded this week already that have higher cap hits that teams would like to move on from. And the answer is they're not getting anything in return. Taylor Hall, Kevin Hayes, etc. I'd expect some more of those types of moves today, because let's remember, in a typical calendar year, you have a whole week between the draft and free agency. Well, free agency is Saturday, so it's just over 48 hours away. And the buyout window closes on Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. So they've got some heavy lifting to do.
So you think we're going to see a busy Thursday here?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a busy day 2 of the draft, particularly when it comes to moving those contracts. Teams know that they have decisions to make, and then you can begin to have some of the other conversations about Noah Hannafin or, Connor Hellebuck or whoever else is out there that's toward the top of our trade targets board.
Getting a look here at the important dates. Qualifying offers due tomorrow as well. So should be some interesting news breaking on Friday. As on top of that, the buyout window obviously closing. You mentioned Noah Hannafin. What is the market like for Hannafin right now? Is there a lot of traction with Calgary and anyone?
No, I think with Calgary, it's really actually been quiet, a little bit to the surprise, I think, of their GM and Craig Conroy. I know even for the Jets, it's been a lot harder than that to drum up a market for Connor Hellebuck. There was some talk earlier this week. It's simmering with Hellebuck and the Jets. I think they're struggling big time to try and move that contract. Not to move the contract, but it's to sign him to the next one. That's really hamming things up for the Jets. There's only so many teams that can afford an $8.5-9.5 million goalie.
Yesterday, like I said, my second time covering an NHL draft, and I love towards the tail end of it when the players who were getting picked, Frank, I'm kind of sitting there going, I don't know a lot about these guys. Steven Ellis, he was buzzing around that draft floor. Picks were getting made. He's running over to our table being like, I love this pick. I hate this pick. Let's get his opinion on what went down with the 32 picks last night with this week's edition of the Next Wave. Steven Ellis and the Next Wave. He is joining us live from behind the scenes for day 2 of the NHL draft. We'll talk about what could happen on day 2 of the draft, Steven, but I guess I'll start with this, the big question. What did you make of the Ducks snagging Carlson at 2 and passing up on Fantilli?
I don't think that's the right move. We all week long, we kind of heard that was a possibility. I know with Carlson, there's so much there you can get being a 6'3" forward. He's got good skating, good skill with the puck. Like, this guy is as complete of a player as you could possibly get, and guy who could go play in the NHL next year. Fantilli would have been my pick, though. That's just a guy that, I don't want to just look at how well he played against college. Just every level he's played, he's been dominant. Even in international hockey, if you looked at some of the advanced stats, this is a guy that doesn't get enough credit for what he does. So I would have picked Fantilli at number 2, but, the margin was pretty close. You can go with either pick, and I think he'll be fine.
So got to ask you about number 28 overall. The Toronto Maple Leafs make what a lot of people saw as the most confounding selection in round 1. They go with Easton Cowan, a winger, obviously an Ontario kid, but what do you think of the Leafs and their decision to go with Cowan in that spot?
I don't get that one at all. With Easton Cowan, at the time I was saying like that was probably the biggest reach we've seen in a long time. And this is a guy I ranked 78th and he went 28th. Now, that's just my personal rankings, but talking to some NHL scouts, talking to some other public scouts, they are all saying the same thing. Like some didn't think he was going to go to the 4th or 5th round. So they must see something they really like there. 53 points in 68 regular season games is nothing special. He was very good in the playoffs. Was a point per game player there and just overall one of the best players that London had, but not a guy that I would think you could be getting in the first round. I thought he'd still be around in the 3rd. So again, I don't get this one for Toronto, but they believe in him, and it was interesting to kind of see like Wes Clark was excited about that pick, and the whole the coaching staff and everybody excited. But just talking to other scouts, they're just like, this makes no sense. So I don't get it. He's a decent skater, good work ethic. I just don't think there's enough offense for him to be like this guy that really is an impact player, especially with some of the players that were still around.
So, Steven, when you size up round 1, who are the teams that you thought, graded out? And look, I hate grades doing it the day after or even a week after. This is something we're going to learn in 5 years. But based on what you've seen of these players, give me 3 teams that did really well in round 1.
I don't want to say Chicago, but I love that Oliver Moore pick. I got to go with the Philadelphia Flyers. Going out there and getting Michkov, the guy they believed in and everyone should have been looking at. Getting him at number 7, I think is very good. You've got your next future superstar right there. Oliver Bonk as that second pick was another good one. One of the best defensemen on the market there. A nice modern day defender who can do a bit of everything. And the team needed a good defensive pick there. So I like that one. The last pick in the draft went to the Vegas Golden Knights. And I thought David Edstrom was an outstanding pick. Vegas likes to trade away their first round pick. So who knows if Edstrom will ever play a game for them, but he's got good size. He's 6'3", uses his size to his advantage, scored everywhere he played this year. Good long-term NHL future. The other one being Arizona, picking the 2 Russians. There's always a bit of risk when you do that, but going out there and getting Daniil Butt and getting Dmitry Simashev, 2 teammates, that might make it easier for those 2 guys to actually decide to come over and then play together. And because you never know kind of what happens to these Russian players, but 2 players, I think that I rated a little lower, but I think are good value picks. And for the Coyotes, I think they're going to be slam dunks.
It's funny that you mentioned the 2 picks from Arizona. You should have seen me struggling last night. Do I call him Daniil Boot or Daniil Butt or whatever it is? So I had a field day trying to figure that out. But to wrap up from my end, Steven, when you look at who's available to start round 2, I expect there to be some jockeying with the first handful of picks, because I think some teams that are outside of that would like to try and get in that range. And 2, a couple teams that I've spoken to this morning, they think that they'd like to try and trade back. Give me 2, 3, 4 players to keep an eye on as you think are some of the best values remaining on your board.
Well, it's good timing because I put a top 15 on the list on Daily Faceoff this morning. But Andrew Cristal, the left winger from Kelowna, if he didn't have a lower body injury, he was going to have 100 points this year. And a guy that grew up with Bedard, and you could tell just the way he's so talented. Issue is his skating, and he's 5'8". Riley Heidt, one of the best point producers in the WHL, a huge part of Prince George's resurgence this year. I know scouts were hoping to kind of see him become more of a consistent producer, but I think that he's still a guy that's got a good future. He's just a bit undersized, kind of keeping with that frame. Gavin Brindley, a winger out of the University of Michigan. If it wasn't for how good Adam Fantilli was, we're talking about Brindley being one of the best college freshmen in a long time. Just again, another small guy at 5'9", and then Grayson Sachin out of Seattle. He left the U.S. National Development Team last year to get more ice time. He got that in Seattle, got to play in the Memorial Cup, scored at a point per game pace, and looked really good in the playoffs. So those are the guys that I'd be looking at to go early today.
Steven, it was one of the hot debates leading up to the draft. No goalies go in round 1. How surprised were you that someone like Hrabal didn't end up going off the board in the first 32 picks?
I didn't believe that there was going to be one at first. And then from talking to some scouts in the last week and a half, there were a lot that thought, San Jose specifically was going to maybe use their second pick to grab a goalie. So to not see Hrabal, though, I think was interesting. But I think we see in the second round, that's when the floodgates start to happen.
There you go, Steven. Appreciate your insight, man. Look forward to your coverage on day 2. Enjoy it.
Thanks so much.
Joining us from the place with the best internet in the world, the NHL draft.
Apparently not.
I like this one in. A Hawks fan chimed in and said they'd love to see the Chicago draft Chris Stahl in the second round here. Wouldn't that be fitting? Hey, you get the guy who grew up with Bedard. It seems like a good fit.
Would be awesome.
Yeah.
I'm most excited to see who takes the goalies first, because I've been saying this forever. If you've been listening, I'm sorry to repeat it, but take as many goalies as you can get your hands on, especially if you have multiple picks, because there's no more important position in the sport. More kicks at the can, more cracks at getting it right and finding a franchise goalie. They're routinely taken in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. Get them early, get them and get the good ones. Give your team a chance.
Jay Tess is in. We're looking for inbox questions over on the YouTube chat. If you're new to the YouTube as well, hit the subscribe button for us. We're trying to get to 7K, Frank. My big number. I can't go on summer vacation till we hit 7K, so everyone can really do me a solid and help me out. Jay Tess, he listens a lot. He wants to know.
We're gonna hold you to that, by the way. Tyler will be slaving every day until we get to 7K.
He wants to know if there's any chance one of Scheifele or Hellebuck start the year in Winnipeg.
Is there any chance? I think there's a greater than 0 chance. I don't think there's a high likelihood. Scheifele for sure, I think is, he's the one guy that you're like, they're very likely to find a place for him. Hellebuck is a little different. Like, first off, goalies don't really get the trade value in return that you're looking for. Second, and this is probably a supporting reason as to why I think he's going to be moved, it's really rare to trade goalies in season.
Yeah.
The other part we've talked about is the contract. Like, how many teams in the league can really afford a $9.5 million goalie? 2, 3?
And when they only play in, again, I think a smart team runs their starter out there 55 games a year. Is that the
He's
best?
playing 61, 66.
Yeah,
whatever.
but we've had this conversation before about teams even heading into the playoffs relying too much on one guy. Okay, even if he plays 60, Frank, to take up that much cap space with a guy who only plays in 75% of your games.
Come on, but when he's playing in 75% of the games, he's the most important piece for most of those 75%.
Hey, and I guess Florida just won the Stanley Cup, got to the Stanley Cup final with a $10 million goalie. So maybe I'm totally off on that.
No, but the $10 million goalie that no one wants.
I know.
And that they can't. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that's one other thing to watch. They've got $14.5 million in goalies tied up next year. Spencer Knight.
Yeah.
Expected to be back.
Chiming in, Phantom wants to know what you thought of Michkov going to the Flyers. I mean, we touched on it a little bit earlier on. If you joined late, like it worked out perfectly for Danny Briere.
Love the pick. Love that they spent a bit of time investigating and finding out more about the kid in recent days. A sneaky visit to their practice facility late last week. They knew that he wanted to be a Flyer. More to the point, I think other teams like the Arizona Coyotes knew that he didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
And the fact that the Flyers targeted him, didn't have to trade anything to get him and have him land in their lap, was the easiest selection I think that they made. They knew going in that they wanted him. And people have framed this as a risky pick.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any risk at all. And I think there's even less risk for the Flyers.
I think there's tremendous upside. What's
the risk?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like really what you're dealing with is the next Kirill Kaprizov or whoever he ends up being. And for a team that's just beginning to tear it down with their rebuild, they're going to take a couple years to get where they want to get to anyway. So 2026, you start with his first year of his entry-level contract, and then you start a 3-year run with that. Like, come on, it's unbelievable. So that's where the Flyers are at. They're excited. And there was, by the way, just speaking of Michkov, and I'd have to do some investigating, there seemed to be a suggestion that if the Flyers wanted to pay, that they might be able to get him out of his contract in Russia. So that does happen, and that did happen with Nikita Kucherov. He was under contract, and that was part of the reason why he went so late in the draft, that they were able to pay and get him out of it.
I was laughing yesterday when we saw the quote from after Michkov got drafted where he said he wants to be in the NHL, and he had a line through his translator that was something like, "It's my right to be in the NHL." And I read that and I was like, huh. Can you imagine the ultimate smoke
what
screen?
That means,
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but like ultimate smoke screen if you get this whole thing played up that you're under contract, and then he's just at camp next year, playing next season. I mean, I doubt that.
I mean,
tongue
look,
in cheek with it,
it's possible. I would say for the Flyers, why would you want to? Why start burning the first years of his deal? You're just tearing it down. Let him develop. This is foolproof.
It is.
As Jason Greger called it, it's idiot proof.
Yeah.
You just hands off. Just let him go do his thing at home, comfortable in Russia. Keep everyone happy in Russia.
And in 3 years, when you are looking to start contending, you have a guy who's going to be a 30 to 40 goal scorer, and you have him on his ELC. There was 22 through 25 seasons or whatever.
Future star.
Yeah. Teresa is in. I believe she listens from St. Louis. She wants to know if you have an update on what the Kings could be looking to do between the pipes, Frank.
Eunice Korpisalo is on our trade targets board. The rights to Korpisalo, they've had a couple months now to sign him. Haven't done it. Imagine he's not coming back. I don't know exactly where the Kings have their sights set, but I would imagine that it's a goalie that they think they can get for a medium term, 3 to 4 years at a pretty reasonable number. I'll tell you what, I don't know if the Kings are in on him, but I know that there's a couple teams that are on Semyon Varlamov coming out of the island. A little bit of an older guy, but well established and someone that can play. That teams are like, wait, we can get this guy and don't have to pay him a ton. That Varlamov is going to be one of those UFAs that's got some real interest.
Andrew wants to know if the Leafs are going to get up to anything today.
Look, I think the big thing for the Leafs, and this is no shock to anyone, is they really, really want to get William Nylander in particular signed before July 1st. Austin Matthews, that's their goal. I think it's been kind of clearly communicated to them that they don't, probably not going to happen before July 1st. They want to take their time and see how these pieces move around the chessboard. And by the way, the Matthews camp wants to know what is happening with Nylander.
Yeah.
They want to know and see all of that play out before they make their decision to sign. And look, I'm not making any bold predictions here. I just, I don't think if Brad Treliving reaches a dead end with William Nylander that he's afraid to move him.
He learned his lessons, you could say, kind of in Calgary, right? With what happened there.
And same agent, Nylander and Johnny Gaudreau. He's been down this path before.
Handful of Oilers questions coming in from Blake and Darcy. Yamamoto getting moved today?
I would expect it's bleep or get off the pot day for the Oilers with regards to Yamamoto.
Perfect. And for the Oilers fans in there, I'll be going live immediately following the final pick of the NHL draft with Oilers Nation every day. Ton of shows going on down here. The Canucks guys are going live later today at the Canucks Army YouTube. Leafs Morning Take is going to get rolling. There is a ton going on around the Daily Faceoff Nation Network Hub. Let's wrap up the show with a little garbage time. Frank, you and I were sitting on the media riser yesterday, and one of the things that caught your eye was just how fresh and clean Adam Fantilli looked, but in a very unique way.
Yeah, it was also it's not just the suit, but it's the vest underneath. And you see that in the picture here. He put the names of 150 different people that have made a significant impact in his life, whether it was coaches, teachers, friends, family, whoever it might be. I just love the look of that. It's a really cool detail. Everyone's got some kind of cool wrinkle, whether it's an awesome liner that you see there in the inside of his jacket or the vest itself. Just a really nice touch and a way to just say thank you, because you don't make it to that stage. You don't make it to round one of the NHL draft without a lot of support and care. And clearly Adam Fantilli, just like where his head's at.
Yeah.
Just a way to say thanks on a night that it's really all about you, but you don't get there without that help.
Yeah, it's a big night for everyone who helped you get there as well, especially being one of those high-end prospects. It was a great little moment there. There was a ton of kind of really coal family moments throughout that first round of the draft.
Shout out to that one prospect, whoever it was, that I guess their granny was there and she had like a big arm tat. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was cool. Okay, one more Ask DFO question, and then we're getting out of here. Cameron wants to know DeBrincat update.
Nothing new on DeBrincat. I think a lot of people were curious. Would the Detroit Red Wings, with that 17th overall pick, be curiously interested in trading it somewhere as part of a package for DeBrincat? Obviously, that came and went, and I don't know. Nothing new to report, at least this morning, on the DeBrincat front. It's been a little quiet the last 24 hours, as you have picked up on, and makes for a sad insider.
Yeah, no kidding.
But at least he's not a hungover insider. So
yeah, I'd rather be a hungover insider than a hungover host. Show tomorrow, yourself and Mike McKenna, you're going to be kind of setting the table for free agency coming off the NHL draft, potentially break down some trades we see today. And then Saturday, happy Canada Day, we're going to have a special edition of Daily Faceoff live, 9 a.m. until 11 a.m., 2 hours of the show. You, me, McKenna,
everyone,
Jay Rosehill, Matt Larkin, Nick Alberga. If you remember how unhinged Jay Rosehill was during the trade deadline show, you won't want to miss it. We're going to have a lot going on Saturday, Insider Cam, all that good stuff. Frank, enjoy the show tomorrow. Enjoy day 2 of the NHL draft. Everybody watching, thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe before you close your window, and we'll chat with you again tomorrow on another edition of Daily Faceoff Live.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.